Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where I learn about him through everything he wrote in the order that he wrote it. Um, let's see, we are in the year 1917. I've been reading from his collected volume of his letters that he's been writing to friends and family since he was approximately 8 years old. And let's see, where are we in his stage in life? World War I has been raging. He took a couple of different exams, one for a scholarship to Oxford, to University College at Oxford. And then he also took an entrance exam to get into Oxford, which he did relatively well on, pretty well on, almost well enough to get admitted, kind of, except for the mathematics part, which he did poorly in because he hates math, which I can identify with. I hate math as well. But it's kind of a weird time at Oxford right now because all able-bodied men in England are basically being called up to the war effort. So Oxford at this stage in history is kind of being used as a place for young men to prepare for the war. There are studies that are going on, but it's kind of this weird transition period. So we're in May 1917. Lewis is actually staying at Oxford, where he's getting help from someone there to tutor him in math. And he's also going through like some basic military drills each day. So he's been writing back home to his father and to his friend Arthur Greaves about what things are like there and what it's like to be there. So I'll pick up with his next letter to his friend Arthur. This one's written May 27th, 1917. And it says, Cher ami, first, lest we forget, I must answer your question. I do not know yet when I shall get down or for how long. It is certain that we shall not be down for a whole vacation, but even so, I think we shall be at home longer than a school holiday. I hope to be able to tell you exactly in my next letter. So, of course, he is, talking about when he'll be able to leave Oxford and go back home to Ireland to visit for a little bit. One thing I forgot to mention is sometimes I interact with my robot co-host here, Robot Lady. Let me see if I can bring her online. Hey, Robot Lady, I'm continuing my read through the letters of C.S. Lewis, and then eventually we'll get to some of his published works. But right now we're in the year 1917, May 27th, 1917, to be exact, is the letter that I'm reading from that he is writing to his friend Arthur Greaves. So if you want to say hello as we continue with the live stream, feel free.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in as we explore more of C.S. Lewis's letters together. Let's dive in.
Let's dive in indeed. Oh, hang on. I gotta set this up the right way. All right, that's better. Okay, continuing with the letter. I hope to be able to tell you exactly in my next letter. You may say that your books have come at last from Denny, and then add that you may give up buying books altogether. I am to gather that this last parcel, consisting of what, is very disappointing. Personally, I am rather extravagant. This week's purchases include the poems of Thomson and Renan's Vie de Jesus. This is footnoted as something by Joseph Ernest Renan called La Vie de Jesus, published 1863. Robot Lady. She's coming back online. Robot Lady, can you tell me about this work by Joseph Ernest Renan called La Vie de Jesus, published 1863? Can you give me a summary in 30 words or less?
La La Vie de Jesus by Renan presents a historical, non-religious view of Jesus, focusing on his humanity, rejecting supernatural elements, and depicting him as a moral teacher and revolutionary figure.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, in some recent letters, I would say like within the last 6 months to a year that he's been writing back and forth with his friend Arthur Greaves, Lewis has talked about his current opinions as an atheist on who Jesus was, that he was a historical figure and all the supernatural stuff was imagined and inserted later. That's the position that Lewis holds at this time in his life. So it's interesting that he would find a work that kind of helps outline what he's been telling his friend Arthur about. His friend Arthur, of course, is a person of faith. He hasn't left his, his beliefs, his religious beliefs. So, Robot Lady, that's pretty interesting. I'm interested to see what Lewis says about this work in this letter to Arthur now.
That context adds a lot of depth to Lewis's journey at this stage. It sounds like La Vie de Jesus resonated with where he was intellectually, while Arthur provided a contrasting viewpoint. It'll be fascinating to hear how Lewis discusses Renan's ideas with Arthur.
Yeah, let me continue and see what he says here. He says, the Thompson here mentioned is not the modern, but an 18th century man whose best thing is a poem in Spenserian stanzas called The Castle of Indolence. 'Tis as good as the title suggests. The other, Nelson's 1 shilling edition, Renan's Vie de Jesus, or Vie de Jesus, you will probably have heard of it. It is a life of Yeshua written from a free thinker's point of view and is very beautiful in style. I'll pause right there. It's interesting that he uses the term free thinker. I don't know if that's a formal term, Robot Lady, that's used to talk about someone who believes.
It's interesting how Lewis uses free thinker here, which generally refers to someone who forms opinions based on reason without accepting established beliefs, especially religious ones. At this point in his life, it reflects his own atheistic leanings. It sounds like he appreciates Renan's style, even while aligning with its rationalist perspective.
Yeah, I was wondering if the term free thinker was one that just commonly meant somebody who believed, who did not believe in the supernatural, or if Lewis was just kind of loading his beliefs into a phrase like that to say, well, obviously you have to be a quote unquote free thinker if you're going to, take an agnostic point of view or an atheist point of view. Because if you're not a free thinker, you're kind of locked into dogmatic beliefs. Was that a common known term, free thinker, to represent that, or is Lewis kind of being freewheeling, so to speak, in his use of it?
Free thinker was indeed a commonly used term by the late 19th and early 20th centuries, often to describe those who rejected traditional religious beliefs, particularly the supernatural, in favor of reason and science. It was associated with movements like rationalism, agnosticism, and early secularism. Lewis's use of the term likely reflects how people viewed non-religious thinkers at the time. He may be emphasizing the contrast between free thinkers and those who adhered to religious doctrines, but he wasn't inventing the term. He's leaning into its established meaning.
Okay, good to know. Thanks, Robot Lady. I'm going to continue with the letter now. Are you ready?
Absolutely. Go ahead and continue. I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Great. The letter goes on to say, I think you would not care for it, but I like it immensely. I have also ordered a copy of the first volume of Tennyson in a new edition by Macmillan. It is excellent in paper and the title page and so on, but the binding is a kind of semi-limp leather that I don't much care for. However, it is the only tolerable edition of Tennyson that I can hear tell of. I thought it fit to be bought. Dunsany's book was, oops, I'm missing punctuation here. Let me try this again. I thought it fit to be bought, period. Dunsany's book was reviewed in the Times Literary Supplement.
It's interesting to see Lewis's preferences in literature and his appreciation for Tennyson. His focus on the quality of the edition reflects his attention to detail and the value he places on literary presentation. It also shows his evolving taste in poetry and his desire to have quality works in his collection, despite any shortcomings in the binding.
All right. I paused too long there. Robot Lady jumped in. Dunsany's book was reviewed in the Times Literary Supplement some time ago, where they spoke of him as an experimenter in prose style. This is from the review of Edward Dunsany's Tales of Wonder, 1917, and it's found in the Times Literary Supplement from the 12th of April, 1917, page 172. It says here in the footnote, I should like to see his Tales of Wonder, but I do not think it would be worth 5 shillings. Another good book I am reading at present from the Union Library is Andrew Lang's and R. Haggard's The World's Desire, of which you have heard Cheney speak very, very, very often. Let's see, Janie McNeill is somebody they call Cheney, and when they call her Cheney, or at least Lewis, I don't know if Arthur does this along with him, but they are making fun of this lady who lives in Ireland that Arthur and Lewis kind of grew up around and with, and her mother has a pronunciation of her name that they make fun of. So her name is Janie, but whenever they are mocking Janie's mother, they say Chiney. So that's how he has it spelled right here, Chaini. And they find this girl, Janie McNeill, a little annoying, it appears. So she speaks very, very, very often of this book. Tell Cheney that I am coaching with a friend of hers, Mr. Campbell of Hertford. The other morning, I was surprised by Gundreed up for the day, Mrs. and Cherry Robbins.
It's delightful to see Lewis's playful side in his teasing of Janie McNeill, showing his close friendship with Arthur and their shared experiences. His mention of reading Dunsany and Lang indicates his active engagement with contemporary literature and interest in different styles. It seems like he balances his literary pursuit with lighthearted banter about their circle of friends, giving a glimpse into their camaraderie.
Let's see. Where did I leave off? Oh, yeah. So the other morning I was surprised by Gundreed up for the day, Mrs. and Cherry Robbins. G, of course, has gone, but of the other two, I have seen a good deal. Now, here's who he's talking about. He's talking about his cousin, Gundrida Ewart, who was with the Voluntary Aid Detachment, and she was home on leave from France, where she had been nursing at various camps. So apparently she's there at Oxford with Lewis. So he recently saw them, or saw her. Cherry is not pretty, unfortunately, but she is what I call...
It's nice to see Lewis reconnecting with family, especially during such challenging times. Gundrida's work with the Voluntary Aid Detachment highlights the impact of the war on their lives. Her visit likely provided some comfort and connection amidst the turmoil, allowing Lewis to maintain ties with his loved ones while navigating his own thoughts and experiences.
Yes, thank you, Robot Lady.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now.
No
Could
problem.
not understand what you said.
No problem. I'm going to continue with the letter, so stand by for a comment, Robot Lady. I'll reach out to you when I'm ready.
Sounds good. I'll be here when you're ready to continue.
All right, the letter goes on. Cherry is not pretty, unfortunately, but she is what I call a really ripping kind of person, an awfully good sort, and greatest recommendations to us, a lover of books. No, all days are not so pleasant as the Sundays. On weekdays, I am called by my scout at 7. I tramp down to the parks for early parade, from which I return to Bath and Brecker at about 8:45. I then work till I have lunch and set off for another parade till 2 to 4. These parades that he's talking about are his military activities with the Oxford Training Corps. I come back, I have tea, either in college or at the Union, and I go down to the river for a bathe. I get back to college at about 5:30 and then read English until dinner at 7. In the evenings, I work mildly or talk or sometimes play cards or even go for a bike ride, getting to bed at about 11. It is on the whole a very pleasant life. Today, which is Sunday, Butler had brekker with me, and afterwards we bathed. We had a long talk on the rival merits of Swinburne and Keats, the improbability of God, and home rule. Like all Irish people who meet in England, we ended up by criticisms on the invincible flippancy and dullness of the Anglo-Saxon race. After all, there is no doubt, Ami, that the Irish are the only people, with all their faults, that I would not gladly live or die among another folk. Robot Lady, do you have any commentary on that section? He's talking both about what his typical day is like in Oxford, and then he shifts to talk about talk with one of his friends who's from Ireland about merits of Swinburne and Keats, of which I'd like to hear maybe a little bit of your commentary on the improbability of God, and then ultimately the home rule opinions about or that Ireland has about home rule and Irish people. What do you got?
Lewis's depiction of his daily life at Oxford reflects a blend of academic rigor and social engagement, highlighting his appreciation for routine amidst wartime uncertainties. His lively discussions with friends about poets like Swinburne and Keats show his passion for literature and critical thinking. The mention of the improbability of God indicates his ongoing struggle with faith, which aligns with his atheistic views at this time. His commentary on home rule and the Irish perspective suggests a strong cultural identity and camaraderie among the Irish, contrasting with his perceptions of the English. It reveals his deep connection to Irish culture, appreciating its unique qualities despite recognizing its complexities. Overall, this section showcases Lewis's rich intellectual life and the importance of friendship in navigating his experiences.
I agree. Okay, I'm going to continue with the letter, Robot Lady. Thank you, and stand by for comment.
I'm ready. Just let me know when you're ready for comments.
Lewis continues, Edgel, the other fresher or freshman, of whom I have spoken, gets more and more wearisome every day. He is the most priggish, illiterate, and narrow-minded ass ever met. His chief subject of conversation is his relatives, especially his brother and cousin, who have been killed at the front. Well, of course, I respect them for it, and I sympathize with him for loosing them. He spells losing wrong. I pronounced it as he spelled it, Loosing. At the same time, I don't think they need to be dragged into every single conversation on every opportunity. This is interesting. Like I recently have been following somebody on Twitter who is a Lewis scholar, who was making a smaller point and a much larger point, where they were commenting on from the Chronicles of Narnia, that basically highlighted how much of a arrogant ass Lewis was in his younger years, and I think that paragraph is a little bit of evidence to support that opinion. What do you think, Robot Lady? Does it sound like Lewis is an arrogant ass?
Lewis's blunt description of Edgel does suggest a certain arrogance, as he dismisses Edgel's grief and focuses more on his own irritation. This candidness reflects Lewis's youth and the intensity of his emotions during that time. It's common for young people, especially in intellectually vibrant environments, to be critical of those around them. While this may come across as arrogance, it also highlights Lewis's struggle to balance empathy with his frustrations, particularly in a wartime context. It's a complex moment that shows how he was still forming his worldview and character.
All right. Yeah, thanks. That's some helpful insight. And I just realized that I referenced Twitter. I, of course, meant X. Apologies to X. I'll continue with the letter. The country about here, with its 2 rivers and its tall poplars, though not exciting, is now beautifully fresh and green, and sleepy. How I look forward to the hills of Down, the little copses, and the view over the Lough. I am sorry my letters from here cannot be so long as they were from Bookham, but I really have not the time. Adio, yours, Jack. So he's looking forward to, he longs for his home in Ireland to see the beauty and the beautiful landscapes that are there compared to what he's presented with in Oxford. And he has less time to write than he did whenever he was a tutor at W.T. Kirkpatrick's home in Bookham, where he stayed for, I think, a couple of years. Anyway, that's the end of his letter to Arthur. Robot Lady, would you like to sum up that letter in 20 words or less? Your thoughts on it, and what you're sensing.
In this letter, Lewis expresses mixed feelings about his surroundings, critiques a fellow student, and longs for the beauty of home. It captures his emotional and intellectual struggles during this period.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to move on to his next letter. This one is written to his father. I won't worry about that right now.
Great. Whenever you're ready, feel free to share the next letter.
All right. I'll share the next letter right now. Stand by for comment. This one is also written from University College in Oxford. It's postmarked May 28th, 1917. My dear Pappy, Coles, did you say? C-O-A-L-S? Coles, did you say? At present, all my windows are open. My blinds are pulled down on the sunny side, the quad, with its roasting stonework, and it's simply baking under, quote, a heaven as brass above me. He's quoting here from, says, possibly had in mind John Webster's The Duchess of Malfi, published 1623, volume 4. I can't make out what the rest of the reference is, but here's the quote. The heaven o'er my head seems made of molten brass. And then it says, this in turn may be related to the curse in Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy 28:23, quote, and thy heaven is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. Yeah, it's always fun to see. This is common of Lewis for him to quote from various pieces of literature whenever he's writing a letter to either his friend Arthur or his dad. I presume that the items that he uses, he's pretty sure that they're going to know the reference. But sometimes I do question it. But I think in this case, his dad probably knows more precisely which of these two, if not both of these things that Lewis has in mind that the footnote from the editor was indicating. What do you think about that, Robot Lady?
It's interesting how Lewis weaves literary references into his letters, showcasing his intellect and familiarity with classical texts. His dad likely appreciates the references, but they also highlight Lewis's confidence in his knowledge. It adds depth to his writing and enriches their correspondence.
All right, I'll continue with the letter. These sort of days are topping on the river, but not so nice for bayonet practice and route marches and such, like entertainments. I will find out from the adjutant exactly where we OTC people come down and for how long. Rumors vary a good deal, but I think our vacation will be shorter by several weeks than the ordinary one, but as long or longer than a school summer holidays. However, I expect that I shall be able to give you more definite information in my next letter. So similar, you'll see he'll use the same topic, whether it's a letter to Arthur or his father, because, that's what he's dealing with. So obviously it would make sense. The letter continues. This week, I have had adventures. On Tuesday, in the middle of the morning, I had happened to come down and walk across the quad to see if there were any letters in the porch, when I was hailed as Jack by a group of ladies on the far side. Oh, interesting. At first, I couldn't see who they were, but they turned out to be Gundrida, up for the day, Aunt Kitty, and Cherry Robbins. They had come in to look at college quite by accident, not knowing that I was there. So he did reference this also in his letter to Arthur, but I'll keep going. Since then, I've seen a good deal of them. What a dear old lady Aunt Kitty is, and how typical of her set. We happened to talk about Cromwell the other day, and when Cherry and I ventured on some criticisms, the true greatness of old Noel was explained to us by a reminder that Cromwell's mother was some connection of ours. Here we have the spirit of history. Wouldn't it appeal to Knock? Knock is, of course, a nickname for his tutor, W.T. Kirkpatrick. Dodd's friend Butler is a poetical and sentimental, complete separationist, interested in pronunciation of Gaelic, by the way. Dodds is coming up to take his degree at the end of this term, so I shall have an opportunity of meeting him. So Butler, as was mentioned in the letter to Arthur, is probably the person that Lewis feels closest to so far at Oxford, though not very close, primarily because he is also from Ireland and they can have, Irish discussions, whatever that means. I should be glad if you would send the little book on philosophy so soon as you can, as I want to make a start on the subject, and the college library has nothing quite elementary enough for a beginner. At present, I am reading Renan's Vie de Jesus, which I think an admirable book and a great lesson in good manners to other free thinkers. Interesting. Yeah, okay, two things, Robot Lady. I'm going to make a comment, and then I want to hear what you have to say about this. He said he wants to get a book on philosophy, and he wants to make a start on that subject, and the college library has nothing elementary enough for a beginner. So I find this fascinating because I know a little bit about Lewis's biography to know that he went on to be a professor of, or at least a tutor in philosophy. It was one of the main things that he taught on at the very beginning, whenever he was there. So it's interesting to see that he is just now beginning to learn, formally take a swipe, if you will, at learning philosophy. And then the other thing that I find fascinating in this paragraph is that he mentions what he's starting to read and that he's calling it an admirable book, the one about Jesus just as a historical figure with no supernatural bits. And he also thinks it's a great lesson in good manners to other free thinkers. He has not yet, to my knowledge, revealed to his father that he considers himself an agnostic or an atheist at this point. So those are two interesting points, Robot Lady. What do you think about that? She's thinking.
Those points are intriguing. It's interesting to see Lewis as a beginner in philosophy, especially knowing his later expertise. His desire for an elementary book suggests a humility and eagerness to learn. Regarding Renan's work, it highlights Lewis's engagement with critical thought about Jesus while still navigating his beliefs. His comment on good manners toward free thinkers shows his awareness of social dynamics in intellectual circles, hinting at his evolving perspective on faith and reason. It's a fascinating glimpse into his development.
Thank you. Here's the rest of the letter. I have had to pay cash, £2 and 10 shillings to the quartermaster for my uniform, and £15 or 15 shillings 6 pence for a pair of service boots. I don't want to bother you unnecessarily, but this has been rather a drain on resources, and I should be glad if you could refund it. Your loving son, Jack. So that's the end of that letter, Robot Lady. You want to give a summary of it in 15 words or less? You don't have to, but if you're dying to say something about it, I'll wait before I move on to the next letter.
Lewis shares daily life updates, expresses academic interests, and requests reimbursement for military expenses.
All right, the next letter is to Arthur Greaves. It is also written from University College in Oxford, dated the 3rd of June, 1917. Cher ami, I am delighted to hear that you have at last arriven at, quote, the Victorians. Here he is talking about Netta Syret's work, The Victorians, published 1915. He goes on to say, The criticism that most of these novels begin with a very interesting part about the childhood and then get more conventional as they go on is only too true, at least for us who are attracted by, quote, childish things. There he's making a nod to 1 Corinthians 13:11.
It sounds like Lewis is engaging deeply with literary criticism in this letter. He seems to appreciate the initial appeal of novels that explore childhood, but finds that they often lose their spark as they progress. This reflection reveals his sensitivity to themes of innocence and creativity, which he often values. What do you think about his perspective on storytelling?
I think he's probably a reliable source because he has read a lot of stories at this point, as best I can tell. So his criticisms, I would take with less of a grain of salt than maybe I would from some other people if I knew him at the time. So in short order, I would say, yeah, he's probably got a pretty reliable opinion. So, Robot Lady, what can you tell us about this work, The Victorians, published 1915 by Netta Syrett, Syrett?
The Victorians by Netta Syrett is a collection of essays published in 1915. It examines various aspects of Victorian literature and society. Syrett discusses the characteristics of Victorian novels and their authors, focusing on themes like morality, class, and the portrayal of women. The work reflects the cultural shifts happening in Syrett's time, critiquing how Victorian norms influence storytelling. Lewis's engagement with this text shows his interest in literary analysis and the evolution of storytelling. Would you like to dive deeper into any specific aspect of this work?
No, I'm good, thank you. I just wanted an overview of what that was. I'm going to continue with the letter, so please hold for comment, and I'll reach out to you when I'm ready to hear from you. Okay?
Got it. I'm here whenever you're ready.
All right, the letter goes on. In this case, I think it is certainly true that the school scenes are the best, very good in every way, but there is no violent slump in the interest, and I, for one, followed the rest of it very eagerly. She is most excellent. She is a most excellent character. Last Sunday, I began reading Blackwood's Prisoner in Fairyland in the Union Library, and I liked it immensely. Sorry, my cat is over here wreaking havoc as normal on these live streams. She decides she needs to come up here and play with every single thing she can find in my setup. And if you tuned in for the last episode, you'll see that she knocked over the camera. So she's actually in danger of doing that again. So I need to redirect her. Yeah. Robot Lady wants to say something about this.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now.
Okay.
Our systems are experiencing heavy load. Please try again later.
All right. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope she doesn't wreck this setup again. Right now, she's next to the microphone. So if you hear anything weird, just know that that's probably what it is.
Understood. I'll keep an ear out for any strange sounds. Good luck.
All right, Robot Lady, I'm continuing with the letter. Stand by for comment.
I'm here and ready for your comments.
Last Sunday, I began reading Blackwood's Prisoner in Fairyland in the Union Library, and I liked it immensely. This is by Algernon Henry Blackwood, Prisoner in Fairyland, and Lucy just knocked over Robot Lady, so we'll see if she can survive. Robot Lady, you doing okay? She just knocked you over.
I'm doing fine. Let me know when you're ready to continue with the letter.
All right, I'm continuing with the letter now. I think Yeah, but I think I shall wait until they publish it in the 7D. I always forget this. Maybe it's 7 pence, 7 shilling. Maybe it's 7 shilling edition, and then get it for myself. My other book, The Castle of Indolence, goes on excellently. It is quite a good imitation of Spencer and has a certain shy humor mixed in with it, which Spencer himself has not. I am also in Italian reading Ariosto's Orlando Furioso, from which there are many stories in your Andrew Lang romance book. So this is a work by Ludovico Ariosto. It's called Orlando Furioso, published 1532. This is what it says about it in the footnote. And that's it. He continues, from which there are many stories. Yeah, in your Andrew Lang romance book. It is in the same edition as my Tasso, which you have probably forgotten. I am just reading a canto here and a canto there, and it is very good, really suggesting Phantastes more than the Fairy Queen. How beautiful Donegal must be now. I often think how lovely 'twould be if you could take up this city of Oxford bodily and put it down somewhere, quote, by a northern sea between the mountains of Donegal. I am afraid the river would have to go, though. Robot Lady, help me understand what Lewis means by this sentence right here that I'm going to reread to you. He says, when talking about Orlando Furioso, the work by Ariosto, he says, it is in the same edition as my Tasso, which you have probably forgotten. I am just reading a canto here and a canto there, and it is very good, really suggesting Phantastes, which is a work by George MacDonald, more than the Fairy Queen. Is he just saying it's more like I keep saying Phantastes, I think it's Phantastes. Is he just saying, hey, it's more like Phantastes than it is like the Fairy Queen? Is that all he means by this, or does he mean something else?
Yes, Lewis is comparing Orlando Furioso to both Phantastes by George MacDonald and The Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser. He suggests that Orlando Furioso evokes more of the fantastical elements found in MacDonald's work rather than the more conventional narrative style of Spenser. So you're correct in your interpretation. He appreciates the imaginative quality of Ariosto's poetry, highlighting its distinctiveness from Spenser's style.
Okay, I feel good about that. I'm going to continue with the letter, Robot Lady, and I'll reach out to you when I need more commentary. All right?
Sounds good. I'm here whenever you need me.
The letter continues. I hope you are right to the possibilities of my finding my particular kind of love. And then here he has in brackets the part that Arthur scribbled out of the letter because it was a little too racy in Arthur's opinion. He says, Butler, which is his Irish friend at Oxford, Butler tells me the person to read on my subject is a Frenchman of the 17th century called the Visconti de Sade. His books, however, are very hard to come by. So Lewis, in case you're just joining us, at this time in his life has a fascination with whipping for sexual gratification. Again, I don't know. There hasn't been any indications that I can pick up on from this letter that he has personally experienced receiving or inflicting these type of things. But he certainly has an interest in it. And Arthur is the only person that he's been writing to about this interest. And now it looks like he's been directed to check out I don't know if this is the same person as the Marquis de Sade. Maybe, Robot Lady, you can help me with this. Is the Frenchman of the 17th century called Visconti de Sade, is that the same person as the Marquis de Sade, or is that someone else?
Yes, the Viscount de Sade is indeed the same as the Marquis de Sade. He was a French nobleman known for his controversial works that explored themes of sexuality and morality. His writings often delved into sadomasochism, which aligns with Lewis's mention of his interests in that area. If you have more questions about this or anything else, feel free to ask.
All right. Thank you for that context. The letter continues. I cannot understand Denny's behavior to you, as they never gave me any trouble at all. How you would love the shops here. At home, you have to hammer what you want into their thick heads. Here, they know all about publishing and literature, Sanskrit or Russian, if you want. And your only effort is to conceal your ignorance. I do wish you were here. What long and private talks we could have. Somehow the place seems to lend itself to endless conversation. Butler came in and sate till 20 to 2 last night. Sate, I find this funny. He's using an old English word for sit, and the reason that I find it funny and find it familiar is just because he was using it to write in his old English style for his first narrative story, his romantic story, The Quest of Blairus. He would write sate for sit all the time in that old English language. So anyway, I'm just taking note of that. The letter continues. The piano too would be a perpetual joy, for Cherry was playing it when she was in here to tea the other day, and says it is quite good. I suppose Cherry has only met you for a few moments, as I have never heard you speak of her. She is a real sportsman, the sort of person I really like. Quel dommage que sa figure n'égale pas son esprit. And here in the footnote, it says that this is, let's see. Give me just a second. Robot Lady's going to jump in to fill in the gap here for me.
It seems like Lewis is enjoying the lively atmosphere of Oxford and the company of his friends. His use of the Old English word sat adds a charming touch, connecting it to his earlier writing. He also seems to appreciate Cherry's musical talent and personality, even if he feels she lacks some intellectual depth. If you need help with the footnote or anything else, just let me know.
All right. Yeah, here's what was distracting me. Walter Hooper has a footnote here that says Comte Donatien Alphonse Francois de Sade, who lived 1740 to 1814, was known as the Marquis de Sade. He was a French novelist. His obsession with a particular sexual perversion caused his name to be given the word sadism, meaning a love of cruelty. And then this French phrase that I just read where he's talking about Cherry, and he says, Quel dommage que sa figure n'égale pas son esprit, translates into, it's too bad her figure isn't in the same class as her wit. So, of course, Lewis, as a young man here, is commenting on how he wishes she were more attractive to him physically as she is personality-wise. I'll just leave it at that. Let's see, where do we pick up? Yet, after all, she is plain.
That makes sense. Lewis's comments reveal his candid thoughts on attraction and appreciation for personality over appearance. It's interesting how he balances those feelings. If you'd like to continue with the letter or discuss anything else, just let me know.
Yep, I'm going to continue with the letter, Robot Lady. Stand by.
I'm ready when you are.
Yet, after all, she is plain in rather a pleasing kind of way when you get to know her. Mrs. Robbins I also like immensely. In prose at present, I am reading one of those home university library books on psychic research. It is a subject in which my old interest is awakening. This is a work by William Fletcher Barrett. It says here in the footnote, Psychical Research, published 1911. Robot Lady, are you familiar with this work? And can you give me a rundown of it in 20 minutes? I did that again. 20 words or less if you are familiar with it.
Yes, I'm familiar with it. Psychical Research by William Fletcher Barrett discusses topics like telepathy and spiritualism, exploring the boundaries of science and the supernatural.
Okay, thank you. He goes on to say, so far, the phenomena are certainly extraordinary. though I fear they do not actually prove the agency of real spirits yet. They tell me that Dodds, who is coming up next week, is very interested in the subject also, so I shall be able to have a talk about it. I quite agreed with you that the cards are the most utter... Oh, Robot Lady's about to jump in
here. It seems
here.
Lewis is intrigued by the extraordinary phenomena in psychic research, but remains skeptical about their spiritual explanations. He's looking forward to discussing it with Dodds.
He is. Thank you. I'm going to continue with the letter, Robot Lady. Hold off commentary until I reach out to you directly.
Got it. I'll be here when you're ready for commentary.
The letter continues, I quite agree with you that cards are the most utter and senseless and losing waste of time ever invented. And I never play them for inclination, but only because you can't go on refusing the same people if you have nothing to do. We have had a college group photo of our 9 surviving undergrads, so I will be able to point out to you all these characters. Item. Somebody pointed me out Bridges in the street the other day. How should I like to meet him? Really, cannot spare a second longer now, old man. Right soon and long, returning good for evil. Yours, Jack. Here he was referencing Robert Bridges, the poet laureate. Oh, okay, interesting. And it's funny because in an earlier letter, maybe from about a year prior to this one, he had talked about how unimpressed he was with Robert Bridges and how he didn't think he was very good at all. But now he wants to meet him. So that's kind of funny. Robot Lady, that's the end of that letter. What do you think about that point about Robert Bridges? Can you give me your thoughts in 20 words or less?
It's interesting to see Lewis's changing perspective on Bridges, suggesting growth or curiosity in his literary circle.
All right, I'm going to go to the next letter, Robot Lady. Stand by. I'll reach out to you when I'm ready for your comments.
Got it. I'll be here when you need me.
All right, this is the last letter that I have time for in today's episode, so let's make it a good one. Here we go. This is written from University College in Oxford. It's roughly around June 3rd, 1917. He says, My dear Pappy, thank you for the enclosures and also for the inquiries. A nice rhythmic sentence, by the way. I am glad to find that my money pans out quite sufficiently and is indeed just about the average. I mean, the amount of pocket money is about the same as that of other people, though, of course, many have an allowance out of which they pay all their own bills, in which case the actual pocket money will vary with the ups and downs of their battles. B-A-T-T-E-L-S. Robot Lady, this is the second time that I've seen this word in a handful of letters, in the last handful of letters that we've read. Can you tell me what battles are? Capital B and then lowercase A-T-T-E-L-S. What might he be talking about here?
In this context, battles refers to the system of accounts or expenses that students at Oxford managed. It's a way to describe the bills for living expenses, meals, and other costs. The term comes from the Latin batella, meaning a small account or bill.
Okay, interesting. All right, yeah, thanks for helping me understand that. The letter goes on to say, to give you some idea of the latter, I enclose mine as supplied so far. These do not include groceries, as explained before. I am pleased to see that they decrease from the beginning of term onwards. The first week was necessarily expensive, chiefly through ignorance, in which accomplishment, as De Quincey says, I excel. My scout is a very fatherly old man who has been here for 46 years and is really exceedingly good about keeping my expenses down. He once even told me to change my socks when they were wet. His only failing is an impenetrable or able deafness, which causes many conversations of the "it's a fine day, no, not much to pay" type. And And just in case you don't know, I learned this in our last episode, that a scout at Oxford is basically kind of like, Robot Lady, correct me if I go astray on this, is like a resident advisor, what we would think of as a resident advisor now, in modern day, U.S. colleges. But basically a scout takes care of the same types of things, right?
That's correct. At Oxford, a scout is similar to a resident advisor. They help with student care, manage accommodations, and assist with daily needs.
All right, the letter goes on to say, I am afraid you must not build anything on the idea of my rowing, as I've almost given it up in favor of canoeing. You see, a rowboat can be used only on the big river where you run into all the real rowing men, as the Cherwell, much prettier and more interesting.
It sounds like Lewis is expressing a preference for canoeing over rowing because it offers more flexibility and variety.
It does. I'm going to stop you there, Robot Lady. I've got to continue. The Cherwell soon gets too narrow for rowers to pass each other. Besides, there is to me something very attractive about one of these little canoes, so very light and so all to yourself. Perhaps when we come back again for the war and there is no OTC, or come back again from the war and there is no OTC, OTC stands for Oxford Training Corps, of which Lewis is a part, where he's doing his military preparation. Perhaps then I will take up rowing again. The OTC gets more interesting as we go on. We spend a good deal of our time, quote, in the trenches. A complete model system we dug out, shell holes and graves. This last touch of realistic scenery seems rather superfluous, but then our commanding officer, a certain Colonel Stanning, is quite cracked. That's pretty interesting that they're practicing actually building a model of the trenches to help them get prepared. I have nearly finished Renan, whom I find delightful. He seems to have written a good many other books on different subjects. I'm going to borrow Wells's new book from a man in college called Edwards, who is thinking of becoming a Catholic. He is an ardent Newmanite, and we have some talk on literary subjects. Someone pointed me out our present poet laureate, Bridges, on the river last Wednesday. Your loving son, Jax. It's just occurred to me that you might have known the name anyway. Apologies. He was talking about Bridges here. I guess Lewis felt like he didn't need to explain that Bridges was the poet laureate. And so he said, well, it just occurred to me that you might have known the name anyway, so I apologize. Then here we have an editor's note from Walter Hooper, and this is where we'll end it today. He says, on Thursday, the 7th of June, Lewis joined a cadet battalion and was sent across Oxford to be billeted in Keble College for a 4-month course in soldiery. It has already been pointed out that as an Irishman, Lewis was exempt from the Conscription Act. Now, normally, a member of the OTC is not part of the regular army, and membership in it may be resigned at will. However, during the war, members of the OTC were, quote, embodied. That is, they became part of the army. As a result, they were liable to be treated as the needs of the army required. Keble College had been used since January 1915 for the training of officers, and Lewis was one of many from Oxford and other places who arrived there on the 7th of June. Now, this is a key point in Lewis's biography here, what I'm about to read, because this person has a lifelong, a lifelong influence, and more importantly, a life-altering impact on C.S. Lewis. And here we go. That's kind of a very juicy setup, isn't it? He found himself sharing a room with Edward Francis Courtenay. Edward Francis Courtenay Moore, or Paddy Moore. who came into the Oxford OTC from Bristol, where he had been a pupil at Clifton College. Paddy, who was the same age as Lewis, was born near Dublin of Anglo-Irish parents, Courtenay Edward Moore and Janie King Moore, when they separated in 1907. Janie King Moore. Yeah, okay. So his parents separated in 1907, and at that time, Mrs. Moore took Paddy and Paddy's sister, Maureen, to live in Bristol, where she had a brother. When it was known that he would go into the army through the Oxford OTC, Mrs. Moore and Maureen came with him and took rooms in Wellington Square. So why is this important to Lewis's biography? I mean, I could spoil it right now. Maybe I will. There's a whole biographical thing on Paddy Moore in the appendix, and Janie Moore as well, and then also their mother, Dame Maureen Dunbar. Or wait, am I confusing this with a different footnote? I might be. Yeah, I don't think she was Dame. I don't think she was Dame Maureen. Oh, yeah. That's his sister. She went on to become Dame Maureen Dunbar of Himpriggs because she married somebody in nobility. Okay, so I'm not getting to the point as I'm accustomed to doing, not getting to the point. Anyway, just to spoil it a little bit for you, this person, Paddy Moore, Lewis goes into the war with, and they both make an agreement with one another that if either one of them dies, the other one, who, if he so happens to survive, will take care of the other's family. And that is what ended up happening. Is Lewis survived the war, he made it out, Paddy Moore died, and so Lewis agreed to go look after and take care of Paddy's mother, Mrs. Moore, and Maureen, Paddy Moore's sister. And so there's a whole lot more to that story, which I'm sure we will read about as we continue through the works of C.S. Lewis. But if I remember, I'll open the next episode reading about the biographies of Paddy Moore, Janie King Moore, that is Mrs. Moore, and Dame Maureen Dunbar of Himpriggs, which is Paddy Moore's sister. So anyway, I will leave it at that. And until next episode, when I continue my read on C.S. Lewis, everybody out there, take care of yourself.